it's time to get a sense of the press review and see what's going on internationally, also on social media as well, what are making the press headlines. Let's bring in Erin Ogdenkeye. Erin, starting with this, well, you can't miss it really, the disunity going on right now between Republicans in the US.
Well, as the Washington Post tells us, Republican House Representative Matt Gaetz from the state of Florida and one of the more radical elements of the Republican Party has threatened to try to oust the Republican House Speaker Kevin McCarthy from his leadership position. Now, that's simply because McCarthy actually ended up passing a stopgap measure, approving legislation rather to pass that measure to avert a government shutdown. And of course, it did have some Democratic support. So that's what Matt Gaetz says is unacceptable. It's worth mentioning that such a motion has never succeeded before. And the Washington Post also points out in its piece this morning that because Republicans have only a narrow majority, especially the more radical elements in the House of Representatives, they would need some support from Democrats in order for that motion to oust Kevin McCarthy to succeed. Now, the Washington Journal, for its part, focuses on Democrats, precisely, the paper arguing that the left does have a lot to gain from Republican infighting. It says that they could provide some votes in order to save Kevin McCarthy, but they're more likely to prefer to see the GOP in chaos. The Wall Street Journal saying that the Republicans' only goal is to blow everything up. It bemoans the fact that they are motivated purely by personal animus, which has nothing to do with fighting for the public good. The paper concluding that this vote will, quote, test how self-destructive the nihilist Republicans can be. And then to finish on this theme, the New York Times actually published a piece giving some rare praise to Kevin McCarthy for, quote, doing the right thing. The paper saying that he does indeed deserve some credit for putting his job on the line in order to avert that government shutdown. The paper says that if he does succeed, it could be a much needed reminder in an increasingly polarized United States that bipartisanship does indeed work when it's used properly, even though the New York Times in this opinion piece today does indeed concede that Kevin McCarthy more likely than not made this decision to get this deal passed with the support of Democrats on purely pragmatic reasons, knowing that a shutdown would have been blamed on Republicans, and that, of course, could have hurt their chances of maintaining the House looking forward towards the elections in 2024.
Right, from the US to the centre of Europe, a country of 5.5 million people, Slovakia. A lot of analysis after the elections this weekend.
That's right, Gavin. The populist left-wing Smer SSD party, led by former Prime Minister Robert Fico, did win the election with nearly 24% of the vote. Those numbers, of course, have been updated since this piece was published on the front page of Pravda. Now, trailing behind him is Liberal Progressive's Slovakia party with about 17% of the vote. Fico will now start coalition talks to form a new government, with the Slovak paper telling us that the former prime minister and head of the Hlas party, Peter Pellegrini, is the potential kingmaker for helping Fico form a government. Now, Politico takes a closer look at those two frontrunners in the race, shows how they exemplify kind of the political polarization in Slovakia, some of the most pressing issues dividing voters. On the one hand, you've got Fico, who's proposing ending military support to Kyiv, while the Progressive Party is kind of attached to Slovakia's role in the European Union, its allegiance to NATO as well, and also fights for the rights of LGBTQ plus people, which Politico points out is pretty much a rarity in such a conservative country. Now, this piece does also say that Pellegrini has acknowledged in the past that his party is perhaps a little bit more politically and ideologically close to Fico's party, suggesting that that is indeed who he's likely to support. But we'll have to wait and see.
And a big factor here is not just a domestic issue, but go outside the borders. Big questions about Ukraine.
Yeah, other papers, including the Financial Times this morning, focused on what all of this could mean for Ukraine, especially because Robert Fico, as a reminder, is opposed to sanctions against Russia. He's also said that NATO-led support for Ukraine undermines national sovereignty. The paper then arguing that he would be a second pretty major anti-EU voice within the European Union, on top of Hungary's Viktor Orban, of course. Now, Swiss paper Le Temps, in the same vein this morning, says that Fico's victory is just one of several recent developments suggesting an end to unconditional Western aid to Ukraine to pass that budget deal. As a reminder, avoiding the shutdown, Democrats, of course, had to scrap military and financial aid to Ukraine, at least for the next month or so, while they look for a more permanent deal in order to appease Republicans. France recently suggests that it needs to stop donating, at least giving weapons for free to Ukraine. And then, of course, Poland has said that it will no longer supply arms to Kyiv, that being the fallout from that grain row between the two.
And you're picking up, finally, on something that if you're going to a hospital, you perhaps got an operation, you can choose a date, choose a surgeon, you might want to think twice.
Indeed, it's kind of surprising, maybe less so for patients. But apparently, women are much better surgeons than men. That's French paper Le Figaro saying that this statement isn't just a feminist affirmation. It's actually based on two factual studies published in independent journals, one in Sweden and one totally different in Canada. Now, they reveal that patients are actually less likely to die or to suffer from complications from surgery when their surgeon is a woman. The studies attribute this to women being more meticulous, thorough, prudent. And the authors say that the difference is actually statistically significant. This is not just happenstance. It's not a coincidence. So it'll be interesting to see, Gavin, if this changes the way that medical studies are marketed to women, because at least here in France, females only represent 30% of surgeons, which is pretty glaringly low.
Yeah, if it says it in the statistics, then it must be true. Erin Ogunkaye, thank you for our press review. Join us in a few moments' time. We'll be back with a full review of all the news headlines of the day here on France 24.